you.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, fellow commissioners, and the rest of the city team. My name is Luke Bonner, the owner of the Bonner Advisory Group based in Ann Arbor, and I'm the consultant to Panattoni, who's represented here by Chris Thorne. Very much appreciate you having us this evening to give us the opportunity to introduce the project here publicly for the first time. We also would like to thank the many neighbors that we've had a chance to talk to from the Haggerty Road subdivision the last month or so. It was very important to us as we've gone through this due diligence process to spend time with those that are in close proximity to this project. We know that this is potentially very big. It's a significant amount of change. We recognize that. And we had two different meetings with neighborhood residents. Wanted to discuss, what we were proposing to do, introduce ourselves, our backgrounds, and really wanted to hear from them. Because as I put it, they live there, we don't. They know what goes on there every single day. And they were very open, very honest, which we very much appreciated about what they thought about the project. And for us, there were three big takeaways that they voiced their concern over. One was traffic. The second was the visibility and the appearance of the project. And third, the natural resources that are currently on site and how that would be handled as the development goes forward. So I will introduce Chris again to take the presentation over from here and talk through what we're proposing and also discuss some of those issues that the residents brought up as it pertains to the actual proposed site plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I echo Luke's comments. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. I also have Jim Butler here with PEA he's our civil engineer. In case there's any detailed questions on the plans that I can't answer, he's happy to kind of be my phone a friend. I echo Luke's comments about the neighbors. They've been wonderful. They had a lot of very thoughtful comments. They've been very engaging. They've been just very wonderful to work with. So definitely thank you to them. So our goal here tonight was just to introduce the project at a very high level. I know some of you have seen some of these maps before, but not everybody. And just give you a feel for what the project is that we are proposing. So what you see here is everything outlined in red is what we currently have under contract. So just to, give you some markers, 94 is along the back, along the south side, 275 is up there, Haggerty Road is along the west side. So everything within the red is what we have under contract. It is about 288 acres. Of that, I would say about 60 acres is wetlands. If you can see the yellow lines going through the site, those are drains, creeks, streams that we are choosing not to do anything with. So our proposed development will work with those as they currently are. We're not going to try and relocate them in any way. We had a very long working session with Eagle that went very well. And they were very supportive and appreciative of the fact that we were going to leave the drains and creeks as they are. So of the wetlands that are on the site, as I said, there's about 60 acres of wetlands. We're proposing to impact right around 10 acres. And most of the 10, this probably doesn't show up here on the screen, most of the 10 is over here on this eastern side. And while all wetlands are obviously very important, these aren't as thick, they're more sparse, I would say, versus the forested wetlands that you see in other areas of the site. So the heavy forested wetlands, like down in here or up in here, we're not touching those at all. So when we impact wetlands, Eagle has talked to us about mitigating on site.
Could you speak into the microphone for us, please? Thank you.
Eagle has recommended that we mitigate on site. They've had discussions with us about that, which would mean we would have to create wetlands on site at a 1-for-1 ratio of what we impact. And so we are estimating at this time it'll be right around 10 acres. And so our area that we're identifying to mitigate it would be on that western side along Haggerty Road. Can you show that? Yeah, thank you, along this western side here. We've also had some conversations with DTE, and we believe that it's possible that we'll need to upgrade some infrastructure. We don't know that yet. If we do, it'll be right along in this area, most likely is where we would put that. As Luke mentioned, there is, a lot of conversations have come up regarding traffic. We have done a couple things to help with that. All of the truck traffic will be forced to come in off of this Interstate Drive Road. No trucks will be allowed access from Hagerty Road. And also, we've engaged a traffic consultant who is partnering with the township, Wayne County, and MDOT to identify intersections that are critical to measure. And once they agree on which intersections those are, then we will go ahead and do a traffic study. So this next slide here shows if we were to max out the site and put buildings everywhere we possibly could, this is what it would look like as far as a building footprint. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, no trucks would have access from Hagerty Road. The only access from Hagerty Road would be for this building right up here in the northwest corner. And that would just be for autos. As you can see, trucks can't get there from Hagerty. So all trucks would be coming in here off of the Interstate Road, off of the Interstate Drive Road. And then this up here, we are thinking most likely would just be like an emergency access. As I mentioned on the previous slide, this would show where we are hypothetically saying we would have our wetland mitigation and where we would put any DTE infrastructure somewhere along this line. So just for reference point, so this building, as you see it right now, is roughly about 300 feet back. This building is roughly about 900 feet back from Hagerty. These are about 1,500 feet back. And this big building over here is roughly about 2,700 feet back from Hagerty. The other thing Luke mentioned was just visibility and just what this looks like from Hagerty Road. So you can see here we have a berm that basically goes all the way down along Hagerty. And when we met with the neighbors, we talked a lot about the berm. We gave them a couple examples to look at. So this would give you a view corridor from if you're basically standing right here on Hagerty. And it's about 10 feet high and about 125 feet wide. And honestly, we had mixed reviews. Some thought this was kind of too full. We showed them a couple different angles of this. Here's another one from kind of further down. And then we showed them a picture of one that was up in Sterling Heights, and some liked this one better. We're happy to do whatever we're directed to, but we gave them just some options to look at. And then we thought it would be helpful to also just show like a section view of the property. So just to orientate you, here's from the west side of Hagerty Road, across the road, the drain, the 125-foot berm, the employee parking, and then the building. From here to here in this picture is about 360 feet. And then the last slide we have is, a lot of people ask what our buildings look like. And, we're obviously open to any suggestions that you have for us. We don't have a tenant at this time. We've definitely had a lot of interest and a lot of questions, but we don't have a specific tenant at this time. But here's just some pictures of a few of our buildings. This top one is one we did for Ghirardelli in Georgia. This is a lumber facility we did, and then this is just a spec building. So those are all the slides we had for today. We just wanted to introduce the project at a very high level and make you aware of it and just answer any questions you potentially would have for us at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions?
Through the chair, I do have a few questions. Could you go to the site plan?
Yes. This one? Yes.
So, as you know, the biggest challenge you have is what I think is probably more unique than any other residential area in the city, where you have a major road right adjacent to it. But you don't have developments that are typically this close to major residential area. In this plan that I see here, I don't see, where's the berm, the distance doesn't look quite right relative to the berm section that you show.
So this berm right here is,
Yeah.
it's maybe not like,
Because
it's probably not to scale here, but it will, what we proposed is 125 feet wide.
yeah, because that looks like it's closer than the
It
125.
probably does in the picture, but in our drawings, what we're proposing is 125 feet.
So you'll have like a flat area before the berm starts, right?
Yeah, can you, yeah.
And so the buildings that are fronting Haggerty Road, yeah, I don't expect anything to look like that.
Okay.
I mean, even at 10 feet high and, that's not a design, that's somebody just. yeah.
We're open to whatever suggestions.
And
you would
so
have.
the building behind it, how tall is that?
It really depends on the clear height. If it's a 32-foot clear height, it would probably be close to 38, 40 feet.
Is it a spec building?
At this time, we don't have a tenant.
It's a
We
spec
definitely had a lot of interest, so it's hard to tell at this point if we would have interest by the time we would build.
So what are you planning to build it as? For
So
what use?
What we talked about doing for the first building would be, well, it would be, the park would be for warehousing.
So it's a warehouse building. So a lot of trucking going around that building, right?
But the trucking would be along in here, so it would
Right.
come in from here and go along here, not be coming in from here, not from Haggerty.
I'm assuming the docks are facing north-south.
Yes, the docks would be here and here, and the office would be facing Haggerty.
Yeah, so there would be an appreciable amount of noise from all the trucks, I would expect.
There would be noise from trucks, yes.
More so than what the residents have currently. Because it is a
Because
major.
it's an open field right now, correct.
So that's a warehouse building. What's the one that's just south of it, the smaller one along the road?
So they all would be, right now, they all would be warehouses right now.
Okay.
This is what we have
And
designed for
what's a
here.
small one though up next to the road? Because it doesn't have no, that one, yeah, that one.
Have a placeholder for DTE infrastructure. It wouldn't be a building. If there would be any infrastructure needed from DTE,
Are we talking like an open
could be,
little substation?
could be a little substation. It just depends on what infrastructure they would need to power the park.
And so the other thing next to it, the item that's south of it, that looks more like detention than,
So what we would have to do is we would have to create new wetlands per Eagles guidelines.
Yeah.
So they would tell us what to put there, what to plant there, and that's what we would do.
well, right now you don't, how are you handling stormwater?
So
Because that looks like a detention pond to me, not a wetland.
yeah, can you handle stormwater, please?
Good evening, Jim Butler, PEA Group. Stormwater for this site, you can kind of see the ponds are kind of highlighted in that light green throughout the area. We will probably integrate some of the stormwater into the wetland mitigation area and when it's in full design.
So roughly what's 10 acres? Can you kind of give me an idea what 10 acres looks like? Because I would imagine that a detention pond can't be quote unquote a replacement for a wetland, can it?
Well, we would integrate it in between
Which like
the
somewhere-
wetland and the stormwater will be integrated
Right, because they
together.
have very specific designs. Once you get past that area of design, you have to add, so you make it continuous to it, so it looks more natural, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Correct,
That's
yeah.
the intent.
I think the thing is, the idea of putting the wetland up front along Haggerty makes sense to me. I think that big building you're gonna have a rough time with the neighbors with that.
This guy up there.
32, yeah, big white building from across the street, because it will, if you ever, well, you've been out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go across the street and you imagine where that is, that 10-foot berm's not gonna come close to hiding that or the trucks. It's gonna get real noisy and there's gonna be a lot of complaints.
It will be the one that will have the most impact to the neighbors, I would agree.
It definitely,
Yeah,
yeah, so if
definitely would.
somehow that can be minimized,
Okay.
maybe some of these smaller ones that are in the middle that don't have, they don't look like they don't look like they have loading docks with a lot of trucking like
And
the other ones do, because they're definitely warehouses on the north side.
The reason these look as they are is is
Yeah.
because they're basically straddling the streams that are in here, so they're maxed out for what we could put in here due to the drains and streams that are cutting
Yeah.
through here.
I can tell you the biggest struggle is gonna be that north building, and definitely if you can get the replacement, areas for the wetlands up along Haggerty, that would be better received, which means that big building, you're gonna have to rethink that one.
This one up here, the northwest,
Yep.
fair enough.
To get any building as far off the road as possible. And I'm sure you probably heard things about, like you're saying, you identify natural resources. Lots of deer out there, lots of turkeys.
Right, absolutely.
There's a lot of that going on. And they use all that, obviously, as their home now. So the more you can naturalize the entire site without clearing it completely. And I don't know, I'm sure you're planning on doing a tree survey, of
Correct.
course.
Yep.
Did somebody already do, you must have had a wetland survey completed already.
Yep, we had a wetland delineation, but we haven't gone further than that.
So I think it's the height, being able to see these things.
This building.
Correct. I
Okay.
mean, if there's some way to tie that, the community college treat area, wrap it around, and then the wetland in front of Haggerty Road. And then beyond that, smaller building and build it up toward the back, I think you're gonna have a better success with, the residents.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. We'll take a look at it.
That's all. Okay.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I feel like I might have missed a meeting. Is this the first time we've seen this?
It is,
In any form, way,
absolutely.
or shape, right?
Right.
Okay, so now I feel a little more grounded
I know.
because I know that I didn't just have a complete,
No,
what
we
is
wanted
this?
to bring it to you to introduce it tonight. You have not seen it before.
Chairman, could I ask the applicant or the presenter to tell me what this thing is? I mean, you jumped into it and I didn't really understand. What is it? What are you building and what are you marketing it as? What are you hoping is going to move
Right.
into this
So
facility?
we've had, like I said, we don't have a tenant as of right now. We've had a lot of interest from warehouse users. We've had some interest from data center users. So it will be something along those lines. We're not thinking it's going to be heavy industry or anything like that. That's not who we're targeting, and we haven't received any interest from those groups. So warehousing, light industrial, potential data center, those are who have been reaching out to us.
Would that be something that would fall into office technology type usage in addition to heavy trucking and warehousing? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that question. I didn't mean to direct that at staff.
Not,
sir.
it, not,
What I was hoping to ask is, what do you, if I remember this part of the township correctly, it's probably zoned either ag or residential.
It's
Is it
M1.
M1?
Yeah,
Oh, the whole
it's
thing's M1.
M1.
And you're planning on
M1.
leaving it M1?
It's M1 and it's C1 along the frontage on Haggerty.
C1 on front.
Or
Yeah, I thought it
C1.
was something like that. Okay.
but all of this is M1.
And you're planning on leaving it as M1 designation? You're not planning on rezoning it?
Well, so as part of our discussions, because some of the frontage on the property is zoned commercial, because of some of the environmental characteristics that are on the site and what it has the potential to do to maneuver buildings and because portion of the site's C2, portion of the site's, I believe, C1, and then a portion of the site's M1. One of the topics of discussion that we've had is utilizing a non-residential PUD as an option to look at the site and look at the development and try to work through some of those concerns. So actually, one of the things that we're working on is drafting a non-residential amendment.
We don't have a
to PUDs.
non-residential PUD.
We don't have a non-residential
It's gonna
PUD.
What are you talking about?
However, as we've gone through the marketing studies, as we looked at some of these other large sites that we have in the community, like the site at Ecorse and Belleville Road, the other site just to the west of it on Ecorse Road, the property at Belleville and Tyler, a lot of these large sites, having that tool available to the planning commission would not be a bad idea because it would give the board the flexibility to be able to address some of the unique environmental challenges that are on all of those sites, this being one of them. So We're in the process of drafting a sample ordinance for the planning commission to look at. Our consultants are going to bring together a report, and the plan is to have a discussion on the potential of a zoning ordinance amendment at the meeting in 2 weeks.
Oh. No, I've set the stage. It's the first time I've seen it. You've got, I've been looking at this for all of 10 minutes. My major concerns would be, I think that's pretty close to Haggerty subdivision. Is that?
It's
That's
right-
what.
it's right across the
Yeah, it's
street.
right across the street, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, the concern with the neighbors having a trucking warehousing district next to that nice little subdivision may be challenging for you. I think that our community is very concerned with levels of trucking traffic, particularly along that Haggerty Road corridor. And you will probably need to spend a lot of time really thinking through how that's going to affect the community. Not saying it's an impossibility for you, but expect to do some traffic impact studies, I would think. Clearly, the screening, the zoning and screening to the freeway, but zoning and
Along
screening
here.
to the west,
Absolutely.
yeah, is probably going to be a big concern. I guess you said you spoke, you met with some of the neighbors. I bet they told you that. I could be wrong.
Right, it
Yeah.
would, the screening, traffic, and the environmental issues were
And
the
it's
three main-
very rural on the other side of the parcel. I think, that's not Van Buren Township on the other side of that, is it? Is that the border?
It goes, Van Buren goes to Hannon.
So is that all the way over to the east? Is that Hannon Road right there?
This is Hannon right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know what, I don't know what your screening requirements are into the adjacent community either, but it's probably going to be something you'll need to consider. I don't have really any other comments other than, I suppose those were probably obvious and self-evident to you, since you're the developers, but.
I appreciate your comments,
Those are the
yes.
ones that I see. I know that wetland mitigation, storm management, stormwater management, that's something that gets handled at the engineering level and with Eagle. And Wayne County is not real fast, I think. Yeah, so, start early, I guess would be my only comments there. That's really all I have, and thanks for letting us know that you're thinking about this.
Thank you.
Through the chair. I guess I could say, because I saw it in staff review, so I had something, I kind of knew what was coming in. At their point, it was told that they should meet with the neighbors, which they did. And they had a fairly decent crowd the first time. And I got phone calls from that, so people were interested. As you said, their biggest concern was traffic, especially if it was going to be on Haggerty Road, but they were satisfied that it wasn't going to be on Haggerty Road. And the berm was interesting to them because most of their houses do not face Haggerty in that subdivision. They face an inner road, so they weren't as concerned as that, but that had been taken care of, so they were happy. The second bunch wasn't as big a crowd, but they still had their concerns, so it's a work in progress.
Anybody else? Comments?
I just asked, how many people showed up at the first meeting that
Probably
you had with
close
Haggerty
to
Sub?
100, I would say.
Yeah,
Luke.
I'd
It
say
was
about
probably right about 100.
Yeah, that's what I was told, there was 100.
And they were
people there.
wonderful. I mean, they
Yeah.
were they had a lot of very thoughtful questions, and we so appreciated them showing up. So I was very happy the crowd was that large.
The last comment I wanted to make is I know, especially for prospective developers, it's tough going into that environment and kind of starting a project on that foot, but it's always so important to get that public engagement and public feedback. So I appreciate that you did
Oh,
it.
thank
So
you. We were happy to do it. So
I
thank
do
you.
have a question. Is this something that needs to be rezoned? The C1, right, would have to get rezoned?
So the applicant is requesting to develop this as a PUD.
Which-
So when they ask for PUD approval, the zoning map will be changed to reflect PUD zoning on the
A
parcel.
PUD that doesn't exist yet in writing?
An ordinance that doesn't exist for allowing a PUD, yes,
Which
is what
may-
I heard.
Which may or may not actually happen.
Yes. So Van Buren Township used to have a PUD ordinance that allowed for residential and commercial, but sometime in the past, that ordinance was removed and replaced with a PRD, which was strictly residential, planned residential development only. The reason why we even considered, when Director Akers and I were talking about a PUD, is all of the industrial parcels that we have left, a good chunk of this parcel is M1. All of the other large parcels, if you recollect the RRC ready report we did, there were chunks of large, massive parcels that are left. All of them are significantly challenged by wetlands, natural features, and other limitations on them. Developing them under the straight zoning, which possibly can be done, will not be of benefit to the township, because as long as they meet the rules and requirements, the project will proceed. But it will not give us the optimal design for the site, which is the reason when we consider a PUD ordinance, a PUD is a flexible developmental tool which allows the Planning Commission to give concessions in some areas, but require an overall public benefit and mitigation in areas where they think it is essential. So for example, if you were to look at the empty industrial transportation district, up where Ashley's buildings are, we have strict requirements, 350-foot wide green belts, double staggered evergreen trees. They are required to strictly meet the ordinance, and that's it. It's straight site plan or special land use. In this case, if the Planning Commission believes that a wider green belt along Haggerty is of benefit, or a combination of a green belt and a fence is of benefit, the Planning Commission can make those kind of modifications under a PUD umbrella. So it gives the Planning Commission and the Township Board greater flexibility and control over a project's design, which, while facilitating development, ensures that the end product is something that will work for the township.
Will that account for square footage of buildings and building heights?
Yes, a PUD ordinance will have regulations. It
Okay.
will have dock to floor area ratio.
And interpretation of how that's applied rather than just a blanket, you can make it this high, right?
Yes.
Based on adjacencies and,
The ordinance will still be subject to the definitions for warehouses, distribution centers, and truck terminals, which we already have in our ordinance. We would not want to adopt an ordinance that will end up making any of the existing developments we have non-conforming. So some of the main building size, dock to floor area ratio, those requirements, building height, design, all of those will be established in the ordinance, but will allow Planning Commission to be able to agree to modifications of them, provided other design adjustments are made as required by you in order to achieve the end goal for the site.
Just to add on that, and Ms. Krishnan is the expert, but I just did come back from the planners conference, so I heard a lot about PUDs and PRDs. They usually put limits on what a planning commission is allowed to do. So they aren't a tool by which we are granted carte blanche to allow anything, anybody with a smile can build whatever they want. That's not how they usually work. They're usually very constrained. We can trade off green belt.
Exactly.
A green belt a side setback may be allowed to be changed as long as there is a corresponding beneficial thing, like more green space in a residential area. I don't know what it would be in a PUD, but there are usually specific trade-offs and guardrails on what we are, as planning commissioners, are allowed to grant. Yeah.
Special land uses have standards based upon which the special land use can be granted. Similarly, a PUD ordinance will have standards based upon which the Planning Commission and the board will approve or review any kind of PUD. And the end result of if a PUD is approved is not just a change of the zoning map to reflect PUD zoning, it'll also be a legal agreement, which is called the PUD agreement, which is executed between the developer and the township. It's a legal document that is recorded with the property.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Please.
just touch on the community benefit side of it too, understanding that's a big component of PUDs. We've discussed that previously, and we sort of look at community benefit maybe not necessarily all being on our site. One of the things we discussed with the residents in our meeting was the current discontinuation of the sidewalk along Haggerty Road on their side, and our willingness to contribute to having that sidewalk completed. So they have, a better opportunity and accessibility and mobility around that area of Haggerty and back into their neighborhood. So from that perspective, we look at community benefit as more holistically, that being an example of it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. And we're glad that you're looking forward to it and coming to us to give us a heads up, so to speak. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, moving ahead. We're at old business. We have item number 1 up tonight. It's by Symmetry Management Incorporated, special land use approval, a request by applicant and owner Frank Jarbo of Symmetry Management to construct a gasoline filling station, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant. The site is Zone C1, General Business District. Gasoline filling stations and drive-through establishments require special land use approval and a public hearing with the Planning Commission in the C1 district in accordance with Article 12, Chapter 3 of Van Buren Township zoning ordinance. Excuse me. The site is located on 2.25 acres of property, split from 7 parcels with a total area of 4.46 acres on the north side of Ecorse Road, west of Haggerty Road, with the site IDs as given. Could we first have a presentation by the township staff? Director Akers.
Thank you. I will turn my time over to Ms. Krishnan, our township planner.
Thank you, Director Akers. Members of the commission, as you summarized, the request before you tonight is for the approval of a new gas station with 16 gas pumps, 5 diesel pumps, an 8,251 square foot building, of which 6,845 square feet is retail space and 1,406 square feet is for a restaurant with an associated drive-through. As you mentioned, the site is Zone C1 General Business. The gas station and the drive-through restaurant are considered as special land uses in the C1 district. As required under state law and the zoning ordinance, a public hearing for this was held at the Planning Commission meeting on August 14th. The zoning ordinance has specific standards based upon which every special land use is reviewed. I'll summarize those in brief. The first one is whether it will promote the use of land in a socially and economically desirable manner for those persons who will use the land use, or for those landowners and residents who are adjacent, or for the township as a whole. Now, this development site is, as was previously mentioned, is the southern half of a compilation of 7 parcels, which are all owned by the petitioner, all of which are going to be combined and then split to create the subject site. The gas station and the convenience store and drive-through restaurant will be located adjacent to existing and proposed industry and freeway-oriented uses, as this site, as you know, is in close proximity to the I-275 freeway ramps. The proposed uses are generally aligned with the uses permissible and the intent for the general commercial district. So we believe it will promote the use of land in a socially and economical desirable manner as is planned for this area and compatible with recent developments that have been approved for this area. It is also to be noted that there is a dearth of food options in this part of the township. There is really no food service place, restaurant, or other facilities available in this area. So any impacts resulting from the use are addressed through site design standards for landscaping, parking, and more, which we will review in our site plan review letter. Is it necessary for public convenience at this corner? Now, the gas station is located on the northwest corner of Ecorse and Haggerty. The Planning Commission approved a gas station with a restaurant, which also had a drive-through on the southwest corner, just at your last meeting. There is an existing development that is located on the northeast corner. However, that particular site was developed and built a long time ago and is not in conformance with today's ordinance standards. Per a written narrative that is provided by the applicant dated August 26, the township has experienced significant population growth since the 2010 census numbers. Along with the growth in population, it is to be noted that have been approximately 1.9 million square feet of industrial space added since then. And that is basically all of the Ashley buildings and other industrial buildings that are up and down Haggerty. So the number of people employed in these industrial facilities has also correspondingly increased. At this point of time, the facilities where they can go and obtain food or other options, they either have to go into Canton or into Romulus, or they have to drive all the way to Belleville Road to our downtown area. This provides for convenience for the employees and the people who are in all of these industrial developments for that particular portion of the township. Is it compatible with the adjacent uses of land? Now, this gas station is zoned commercial. Just down the road, we have all the Ashley's huge industrial buildings, and down Haggerty Road, we have many other. Between the subject site and Ashley to its west, we have 3 parcels that are residentially zoned and used at this time that are sandwiched between Ashley and the subject site. However, all of these parcels are master planned for general commercial uses. And the applicant has given us to understand that they are currently in the process of speaking with those property owners in order to acquire those parcels also for future commercial development. So right now, those parcels are sort of the only isolated residential parcels that are located in that area. Is it designed, located, and proposed to be operated such that public health, safety, and welfare is protected? Based upon the sites, which we shall go over in detail in the site plan review letter, based upon the drive-throughs placement, the landscaping, pedestrian access, we believe it will enhance the site's health, safety, and welfare overall. The applicant has been working with township staff over the past several months, and the design of the drive-through, the way the lanes are placed, all of which have undergone multiple changes. In fact, the last time you saw this plan to this time, 1 drive-through lane has actually been dropped. It was 2 drive-through lanes. It has been reduced to a single drive-through lane, simply because the site was redesigned in order to ensure that at all points of time, there is very limited areas where pedestrian and vehicular traffic can conflict. So the site design was paid specific attention to. This is a prominent corner in the township when you're heading west. So as such, this development of this parcel for commercial uses basically creates a commercial corridor in that area serving all the industrial uses. We do not anticipate that the site plan will affect this current public service capacity in that area. The applicant will be working with the township engineer to meet any utility needs and requirements. The special land use is not likely to cause any injury to other properties in the neighborhood. With regard to the natural environment, it does add impervious surface area and involves the removal of some scrub vegetation and a portion of trees. But the applicant is mitigating that by providing all of the replacement trees required under our ordinance. Provided compliance with the ordinance related to all site design are there, the standard is met. The gas station and drive-through are within the provision of uses that require special land use approval and are in harmony with the intent of the C1 district. And finally, it is a valid exercise of the township's police power to review the requested special land use. In addition to these general standards, there are specific standards for drive-through uses itself. The site does comply with all 4 of those standards. Basically, it does maintain the required distance from the access drives on Ecorse and Haggerty Road intersection. In fact, the requirement for drive-throughs is less intense than what we require under the access management portion of our zoning ordinance, which requires a distance of 250 feet. So the applicant far exceeds what's the minimum requirement for drive-throughs. The drive-through does have direct ingress and egress of Ecorse and Haggerty, both of which are classified as paved major thoroughfares. All of the lighting on the site is designed to comply with the ordinance requirements. We had previously recommended that since the site does abut an existing single-family residential use to the west, that in addition to a green belt, they actually provide a fence also. We had asked the applicant to speak with that property owner to ensure that they do want the fence. The neighbor to the west has provided a signed statement saying that they want to waive the requirement for a fence. They do not want a fence along their property line. So the applicant is providing a green belt that is in conformance to ordinance standards. And no schools or places of congregation of children exist within 1,000 feet of the site. So the final standard is also met. The criteria for gasoline filling stations are mostly met, but are reviewed in detail in our site plan review letter. Based upon our review of the proposal and the numerous iterations it has gone through and the applicant's responsiveness in working with township staff to design a site which we believe will function to its best optimal way based upon this layout and setup, It is our recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the gas station and drive-through restaurant to the Township Board of Trustees, subject to site plan approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have anything else on this?
I do not know, thank you.
Okay. I believe, I find my paper. Mr. Jarbo, I believe that's you.
How are you?
You've got the floor, sir.
For your time. And first, I want to say thank you very much, Vidya. We've worked hand in hand on this together, and she's been very helpful and supportive and guiding us in the right direction, and helping obviously the community too as well to get the proper plan together. Thank you so much. We appreciate that, Vidya. And thanks, Ron, too, for the IT support. So, Frank Jarbo, my family has owned this property for over 30 years. We've held on to it to maybe future develop it. My brother, which is the applicant, also owns and operates the gas station on Ecorse in Hannon. Prior to the gas station being there, the gas station that we developed there was 10 years ago. Prior to that, it was a small little convenience store, which my brother operated for 30 years. So he's been in the community for over 40 years. We develop across all of the communities around Michigan, southeastern Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, and we've done this for over 20 years. But this is a site that we're very passionate about. We've held on to it. We've had numerous offers from Ashley, from multiple other developers, all other gas station owners to develop it. But this is something that we wanted to do at the end of the day to make sure that it's developed right, and it's something that will probably stay in our family for a very long time. Again, we put a lot of thought and effort into it with Vidya's guidance. You would see, and not trying to compare plans to one to the other, the one that you already approved. Ours, it's a C-store front. It's a retail front as you come into the community. You're not looking at gas pumps. You're not looking at a drive-through. We try to set those off to the side to make it a secondary look. I think that we've done a great job with the circulation. I think the landscaping that's there today, or the upgrade in landscaping that we will be doing, obviously after the develop the site. And we've also thought about future development here too as well. In the Haggerty curb cut that's there, we own the parcels going north. And what we plan on doing is eventually when we do develop that, we're not asking for another curb cut, maybe on the other side of the end, further down where our lots stop, but we plan on using that as a means of ingress and egress for that future development. We've had numerous discussions with the 3 lots, residential lots that are in Haggerty, and in the event they are able to, want to sell and we can come to an agreement, we'd like to develop those too, and that's where we even told Vidya in the future we don't need another curb cut. We'd like to utilize that curb cut, and to Vidya's point is, and looking out for the city. Tomorrow, if we do sell this gas station, which we don't plan on doing, we would have a reciprocal easement in place, so that even if we were to develop it, that's something that in the future that somebody could have to work with. We've worked with Ashley Capital. There's a little bit of a couple things that help on their site that they're looking for, that we want, and just try to make it a harmonious development at the very end of the day. But I'm here to answer any questions, any concerns about the development.
Okay, thank you. Planning commissioners. The floor is open.
I think the question is, how much are we really going to ask now, given that there's a preliminary right after this? How in depth should we be going at this
That's a
point?
good question. Feedback? Do we want to? Yes.
Before you is the special land use.
Right.
So you would not need to go into the details of the landscaping, the trees, the fencing, the building architecture, lighting, none of those. You're reviewing, is the use appropriate? Does it meet the standards of the ordinance based upon what I just evaluated it for? As long as it meets, you can make a recommendation. You will still be going over the site plan review after this, because one of the conditions of special land use approval is site plan approval. So you can ask or make design suggestions on the site plan. But this one is strictly for the use only.
Thank you. Haven't you got
I
a
have-
question there?
I have a- What restaurant are you gonna put into the building?
Very good question. I mean, as Vidya alluded, this is a little bit of a food desert over here. So what we've done in other developments of ours, especially the one on Ecorse and Hannon over there, we do have the Tim Hortons, which, mind you, when we developed that site over there, nobody believed, we couldn't get not one Tim Hortons franchisee, not a Dunkin' Donuts franchisee to believe in the area. We became the Tim Hortons franchisee, and eventually after a year, we sold it off to somebody that does this day to day, and we proved the concept. We have good family members of ours that run the Soroki's Pizza in there, and that's, pizza, chicken, all that other stuff that they do very well in little kiosks. So we want to do something similar to in this station. We want to do an end cap drive-through, call it hopefully with a national, somebody that can bring a little bit of national presence, call it a McDonald's or a Taco Bell. I'm not sure. I really don't, we haven't talked to anybody just yet. But we want to put 2 other food offerings on the inside. And that's where, maybe a similar type of Soroki's Pizza, similar maybe a burger place we're talking to as well. And not just make it just convenience, but add a food component to it. And not just one, so we'd have probably 3 different food components at that point.
Is there gonna be a seating area? I haven't looked at the
We,
plan.
no seating area on the inside just yet. None of the applicants have asked for that, but that's not something that we would, if they asked for, we would probably provide
Or
it.
like grab and go
Yeah,
type stuff?
exactly.
Mr. Chairman, I have a concern about the compatibility. Now, look, we look on the site plan. I know there's diesel truck filling there. I know the site plan had layout for semi-trucks coming in. From a special land use standpoint, use seems all right, location seems good, but the zoning here is C1. And now I know there's a freeway service district right next door that has the semi-trucks and is actually a very truck-stoppy truck stop. And this I can see is more of a filling station for cars than it is for trucks. But I noticed there's a whole island for semi-truck pull-throughs. That makes it look somewhat like a truck stop to me, and I believe that C1 isn't incompatible with the truck stop use. Now, maybe I'm mistaken on that. Maybe it's not a truck stop. I want to have that discussion. I don't know whether our planner or our director would be willing to carry that on in the site plan review, or if that would be more appropriate to hold now. I guess
I can address that question for you. So this is a gasoline filling station. It provides for filling opportunities for passenger vehicles, and it also provides filling opportunities for trucks. It is not a truck stop. Truck stops are permitted only in the freeway service district, and the reason it's not a truck stop is because our ordinance defines a truck stop as an establishment which shall be located on a major thoroughfare and which shall be designed for and contain facilities to meet the needs of commercial truck traffic. When they say facilities to meet the needs of commercial truck traffic, a typical truck stop not only has fuel and food, it has overnight or long-term parking, it's got laundry, it's got showers, it's got place where truckers can charge their devices, it will have sleep lounges, it will have maintenance, vehicle wash, and many other ancillary uses. In addition to that, our definition in our ordinance goes on to say, contain facilities to meet needs of commercial truck traffic while in transit, including restaurants and vehicle service minor. It is not or. It is restaurants and vehicle service. In this case, there is no vehicle service being provided on that site. Therefore, the definition for a truck stop does not apply to this project. It is strictly a gasoline filling station for passenger vehicles and for some trucks. So this would not qualify in any way for a truck stop. There is no overnight parking of trucks permitted. There is no long-term truck parking permitted. It's strictly for trucks to come, refuel, maybe go into whatever the pizza or chicken places, pick up their food and leave the site, just like any passenger vehicle would.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I think the applicant was about to jump in and try to answer that question as well, and I'd be very interested in hearing his explanation as to why this isn't a truck stop.
Okay.
He's an expert in the field, is my
Yes.
understanding.
The expert in the field, but Vivia's, I take her answer all day long. I mean,
Well, I'll be honest,
I can reiterate that. I mean, if we can leave
do
it.
too, but I still would like to hear
Yeah.
your explanation.
If similar to this site, at our Ecorse and Hannon site, we have a diesel filling island there as well. We do not want semi-trucks on this site. That's not what our intention is. Our intention is box trucks that come in that need a little bit of diesel. We have in this community over here, we have a lot of diesel trucks just that are out there that need fuels. And, you know, when you have a bigger truck that's underneath the canopy, and then you have a small, you know, sedan car next door, it just doesn't work. And that's why we try to push the diesel off to the island. But we are going to get maybe a FedEx truck. We might get a Amazon truck to come over and fill up. We might get, you know, a trailer with somebody on the back that's got, you know, off-road diesel that needs to fill up. And that's where those guys take a little bit of time. And that's why we've pushed them off to their own island where they can take their time, fill up what they need to do, come in, as Vidya said, pick up some whatever they're picking up and move on with their day. We do not want the semi-trucks. That's not our intention. And that's not who we cater to, because quite honestly, we can't even cater to them. We don't even have the price point to do that. The truck stop that's across the street is where those normal, you know, logistic companies have contracts with them, where they can pick up their fuel, how they can pick it up, and the preferred pricing. We can't even compete with them today.
I believe you said not a truck stop.
Right.
Okay. So please, I'm sorry.
The thing I was going to note is on your site plan, you do show a semi-truck turning radius pathway as well as noting interstate semi-trailer, and that would be a trailer truck?
We asked them to under site plan, even though they expect only Amazon on FedEx, if a semi on the interstate should choose to suddenly swing in there, the site circulation still needs to work. So
Which,
that's why we
I mean,
make
they
them put
will.
that in.
I mean, it accommodates.
They can't
semis.
like bar the gates and tell them to leave in case somebody
And if
comes
it's
in. So we wanted to make sure the site works for that.
I mean, if they're coming south down Haggerty Road from Michigan Avenue, I'm going to pull in there. It's easier to pull in there than cross traffic.
Yeah, and also too, the truck for, you know, our fuel truck that's going to reload us, that's a semi truck. So we need to get that circulation done.
Right.
Fire trucks are about the size of a semi truck. We need to get that circulation on the site too as well.
Mr. Chairman, I think that
Yes.
in a public hearing for this, some members of the public brought up first issues about wetlands and flooding, and I just want to say that we've looked at that. I believe wholeheartedly that's an engineering issue, and that
Mhm.
I have not seen a site come along where engineering it and developing it made the flooding worse. I mean, that's pretty rare for that to happen. So, I mean, you know, when the public comes and brings us concerns in a public hearing about increasing flooding, I'm convinced that developing the site will help ease any flooding on that corner, not exacerbate it. I think that the economic conditions, while a valid concern, are personally, my opinion is that's your problem. I mean, if I can be blunt about it, if you believe you can make a business work there, great. Yep, you do. And so when we hear concerns about economic viability, I've got to believe the fact that you're pursuing this means you're fairly confident it's economically viable.
Yes, we are. Yep.
And I can see that it's going to provide a service to our community.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. The area really doesn't have a lot of food up there, and there's a lot of people working there. It's tough if you want to get a bite to eat. So I believe there is benefit at this location, and the concern about the zoning, I am convinced that our interpretation of the definition means this isn't a truck stop. It certainly isn't a very trucky-looking truck stop, if I can. It's not really a technical term, but I'm not a professional planner, so it's a nice-looking site. I think the design overall is good, and I would be in support of recommending this up to the Township Board of Trustees. I think it looks like a reasonable special
I
land
agree.
use.
Anybody else? Comments, questions? Okay, do we have anybody from the public wishing to speak? Anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, there is nobody on Zoom wishing to speak.
Okay, with no public, then I would entertain a motion concerning this item.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Grant,
Make a motion to recommend approval of special land use to the Township Board of Trustees for Frank Jarbeau of Symmetry Management to construct a gasoline filling station, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant on 2.25 acres of property at the northwest corner of Haggerty and Ecorse Roads, also subject to the McKenna letter dated October 1st, 2024.
Support that.
we have a motion by Commissioner Grant, supported by Commissioner Jar. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Paul? Yes. Peter Creel?
Yes.
Bernie Grant?
Yes.
Sherry Budd?
Yes.
Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Cullen?
Yes. So we've got the special land use approved. We'll send that on to the Township Board.
Time, we
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Vidya, thanks so much, too.
Now for item number 2, Symmetry Management again. Preliminary site plan review. A request by applicant and owner Frank Jarbeau of Symmetry Management to construct a gasoline filling station, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant. The site is Zone C1, General Business District. The site is located on a 2.25 acres of property split from 7 parcels with a total area of 4.46 acres on the north side of Ecorse Road, west of Haggerty, with property IDs as given in the agenda. Could we have the presentation by the township staff? Director Akers.
Thank you very much. I will turn my presentation over to our planning consultant, Ms. Krishnan.
Thank you, Director Akers. If you could please zoom in on do you have control of it, Frank? Would you just zoom in so the Planning Commission can see when I'm making comments about the various aspects? So, as was previously summarized, this is a special land use, the drive-through and the convenience store, the drive-through and the gas station are special land uses in the C1 district that you just recommended to the Township Board. The retail use on the site is a principal permitted use. All of the required information by the zoning ordinance is on the site plan. We are requiring that all of the parcels need to be combined and split and recorded before they come back for final site plan approval, because we need to have the final legal description of this parcel recorded. With regard to dimensional requirements, the ordinance has specific requirements for front, rear, and side yard setbacks, not just for the building. It has also got setback requirements for the pumps and for the canopy, gas station canopy. The proposed site plan complies with all of the ordinance's setback requirements. The building height permitted in the C1 is 40 feet. The proposed building is well within the height limit and is compliant. One of the biggest things we look at in almost every project that comes into the township is access management, circulation, and traffic. In this case, the applicant is proposing 2 access drives to the site, one off Ecorse and one off Haggerty Road. Both of these access drives do maintain the required separation distance from the intersection that is required by our ordinance. As the applicant previously mentioned, the Ecorse Road driveway is set all the way to the west of the property line. We had previously suggested maybe they should try and line it up with the Sheetz gas station access drive to the south. However, doing so would result in bringing the applicant's access drive that much closer to the intersection. We would prefer to maintain more distance. And it would also, in the future, if the applicant develops the 3 parcels to the west, it would result in the need for a secondary access drive to the parcel. By placing it on the western edge of the property, in the future, you can easily have access to those 3 parcels without allowing for one more curb cut on Ecorse Road. On Haggerty Road, due to the proximity to the intersection, even though it meets the separation requirement, we discussed with the applicant, based upon the drive-through's layout, that the Haggerty Road access drive is going to be right in, right out only, so that people are not trying to turn left out of the Haggerty Road, because Haggerty Road is the high-traffic corridor. So we wanted to limit the amount of traffic that can turn and create a conflict in the center lane on Haggerty or in the oncoming traffic lanes. So the Haggerty Road access drive is right in, right out. There is an island in the middle. That island is designed per engineering standards. That particular design allows for the movement that is recommended. In order to make sure that the island is clearly visible, we had asked the applicant to make that island with colored paved stamped concrete. So it'll be clearly distinct. You'll be able to see. It'll look like orange brick pavers or something like that. You'll be clearly distinct from the pavement that is around it, so that circulation patterns will be very obvious to people and they can't cut through. One of the things that the ordinance requires is that driveways on a particular street need to be offset by at least a certain number of feet. Now, we have the BP gas station across the street. The BP gas station's driveway is non-conforming. As I previously mentioned, that site that predates our zoning ordinance standards for access management. So it is a non-conforming parcel. We don't want to force this site to comply, aligning with a non-conforming parcel, thereby making this less functional. So this is a modification that the Planning Commission can grant, since the site is not maintaining the separation from the BP gas station driveway. We believe this is the optimal design that is best functional for the site. With regard to cross-access, as was previously mentioned, the access drive off Haggerty goes all the way up to the west property line, and the access is identified as a shared driveway access. That access will not only provide future development to the north that is owned by the applicant access. If a driveway should go through to the west side of the site, it will also allow for potential access on the northwest corner of the property. We made it is our requirement that the shared driveway access and maintenance easement be recorded with Wayne County prior to issuance of any permits. They would still have to go through full engineering, final engineering, before that can be recorded. So as long as the recording of the easement is done before construction permits are issued, that would be acceptable. With regard to drive-through, as I previously mentioned, since you last saw the site plan, the applicant eliminated one of the drive-through lanes. We just believed it was too much. It was just too much stacking, too clustered, and removal of one of those drive-through lanes resulted in a better site design, because the applicant was able to relocate their dumpster that was on the northwest corner of the property to right behind the building. That way, it is concealed from view of Ecorse Road. You won't be able to see the dumpster enclosure, and the loading space is right there, so you won't have the convenience store or the fast food restaurant employees having to walk all the way across the site to the northwest corner to throw trash every day. This way is safer for them, because they will not be crossing across truck or traffic pathways. So one drive-through lane was eliminated, and the applicant does show a concrete curbed landscape island that you see. It is like an L-shaped island along the drive-through. The plan shows that it will be planted with seeded lawn. There is quite an expanse of pavement on the site. We believe that island should be planted with low shrubs or decorative ornamental grasses, which will actually thrive in that narrow space. It will just enhance the look of the drive-through and also sort of give a clear visual separation from the diesel pump area. So our recommendation is that the area be planted with ornamental grasses or low shrubs. Our 5-foot wide sidewalks are shown along both Ecorse and Haggerty Road frontages along the entire frontage. The site interior is also connected to the sidewalks along Ecorse and Haggerty. If you can see, there is a sidewalk stub shown along with crosswalk striping, both from Ecorse and Haggerty, so that if any of the employees from Ashley or somebody want to walk and go to the fast food restaurant or pick up something from the convenience store, they can safely cross in without trying to walk across the main access drive. Truck circulation diagram and emergency vehicle circulation diagram has been provided. It meets the planning standards. We would, however, defer to the fire marshal for fire truck circulation being adequate. With regard to parking and loading spaces, All of the parking spaces shown on the site meet the minimum width and depth requirement of the ordinance, including the handicap accessible spaces. All of the spaces are double striped as required. As in the case of 2 other drive-throughs that the Planning Commission has previously approved, we once again have an issue with stacking spaces for the drive-through. This might be something we might need to revisit. Our ordinance requires 5 stacking spaces between the pickup window and the order station, and 10 stacking spaces for each order station. And that is 15 stacking spaces for one drive-through lane, which is unlike any other zoning ordinance. There was a reason why this was put in, because there was a time when we had a couple of fast food restaurants that were just not functioning properly. So the ordinance ensured that in the future, if any fast food comes. But since then, there has been a lot of difference in the way fast food chains operate and the way their menu stations and order board stations are set up. So 15 stacking spaces per drive-through would seem excessive. In this case, the applicant does have the 5 spaces between the pickup window and the order station. They have 7 spaces shown in the stacking. So they're asking the Planning Commission to approve a modification for 3 spaces. Those 3 spaces can actually be dimensioned on the plan. If the applicant were to wind it around to the east side of the site, they should technically be able to show it striped on the plan if needed. But in this case, they are showing their entire stacking combined, consolidated within that landscape island and the wall of the building, so to speak, wall of the loading space area, so that it's all contained. We do support the modification to reduce the 10 stacking spaces from the order thing to the entrance to 7 spaces. Required barrier-free parking spaces are provided. All of the parking spaces are compliant, as is the loading space. The ordinance has extensive landscaping requirements for frontage along both streets, for screening of the parking lot, for the interior parking lot landscaping. The applicant has noted that there will be stamped concrete in the island of Haggerty. We just want to make sure that that is colored stamped concrete so that it is clearly visible. Maybe make it brick color so it stands out and pops more. Loading area screening is provided. The ordinance requires a 20-foot wide buffer on the west side of the site, which abuts R1B zoning, with 1 tree per 20 lineal feet, and 50% of those trees need to be evergreen. So based on the ordinance calculations, 13 trees are required, at least 5 of which need to be evergreen. The applicant has proposed a 20-foot wide green belt, out of which there are 13 trees, 8 of them are evergreen, in order to provide for more screening than the ordinance requires. We had, as I previously mentioned, recommended maybe a composite fence along the property line, but the neighbor to the west, the address is 41540 Ecorse Road. The neighbor has provided a signed statement saying that they do not want such a fence along their property line. The ordinance does require a green belt along the north property line, even though the property to the north is owned by the applicant and is also zoned C1. Since we don't know at what point of time that parcel is going to be developed, as the Planning Commission has required on previous sites, you must put in the green belt at this time, which the applicant is doing. They are complying. One of the requirements of the C1 district is to provide for some outdoor space that is usable. It has to have a minimum area of 330 square feet. Now, the applicant has shown a 493 square feet area in the middle of the site's frontage on Ecorse Road. This is the area I'm talking about. But the area is basically just a landscape island. What the ordinance requires is to make it slightly usable. So our recommendation is that the area be enhanced with maybe a seating bench, a trash can, and a bike rack. Maybe somebody from the industrial development can bike there, or they want to get a bite to eat and just sit there if the weather is good. So that island can be designed more as an amenity area rather than just as a sidewalk connection. With regard to mechanical and utility equipment screening, the facade appears to be tall enough to screen all rooftop equipment with a parapet. The plans do not show exactly where the mechanical equipment is on the site plan, although the landscape plan includes screening for the transformer. The site plan does not show where the transformer is. So that needs to be shown on the final site plan with screening around it. The screening is shown on the landscape plan, but not the location. The site does comply with the tree removal permit requirement. 14 protected trees are identified on the site. 2 of the trees are going to be removed, and for them, a replacement is proposed in the form of one 4-inch deciduous tree. That is a pretty large tree for a 4-inch. The lighting on the site is a mix of pole-mounted, wall-mounted fixtures and accent lighting. All of the fixtures meet the ordinance standards for screening. With regard to architecture, if you could please bring the architecture up on the screen. The building will be clad primarily in gray and white brick in alternating bands with glazing, facade reliefs, and soldier courses that would provide visual interest. The applicant has bought a material color palette as we had required them to bring before you, so the Planning Commission can see the colors. The coping is going to be dark bronze color, and the storefront awnings as accents are also going to be dark bronze in color. Overall, the building materials and the decorative lighting, which are modern wall sconces, it actually gives the development a sleek, high-quality look. Some of the buildings the Planning Commission has previously seen are all red brick, which gives a more traditional look with canopy awnings or red metal awnings. In this case, the color palette is shades of gray and bronze. And with the accent lighting on the building wall, it really gives the building a more sleek look. Although that elevation is probably darker than what the actual material is. It's, you can see it. I think when it comes into a colored rendering, the colors don't accurately reflect, which is why the Planning Commission requires the materials board for you to actually see the materials. The dumpster enclosure has been placed behind the building, which is a much better location for it. The dumpster enclosure and gate details need to be added to the plan. They were actually on the previous set of plans, but when you submitted the revised set, for some reason, they got taken off. So they must be put back on the plans itself. With regard to signage, all permanent wall, monument, and canopy signage will require separate review and approval. The applicant has shown conceptual location of where the wall signs are going to be, and the monument sign that is shown at the corner does comply with the setback requirements. It has to be a minimum 10 feet from all rights of way. Now, the height of the sign base needs to be a minimum of 2 feet. It looks like it meets the ordinance requirement, but we do not want to make the assumption, so it needs to be labeled on the plans itself. Details of the drive-through order station signage, screens, and signage on the gas station canopies will also be required, a sign package to be submitted with final site plan approval. I defer to the township engineer for any comments on engineering and utilities. Based on our review of this proposal, which, like was mentioned by Frank, we have been going over this site plan for a long time and making changes all over it. So at this time, it does seem like we have several conditions listed, but many of these are minor corrections or additions to the plan, and some of them are Planning Commission approval of modifications, such as the BP gas station driveway separation and the loading space, so on and so forth. Not loading space, I'm sorry, the stacking space requirement. Based on our review of the proposal, it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant preliminary site plan approval for the proposed gas station and convenience store with drive-through restaurant to be located on the northwest corner of Ecorse and Haggerty Road intersection, subject to the 14 conditions that are listed in the McKenna review letter dated October 1st of 2024. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kamen.
Thank you, Chair. As always, at this level or at this stage in the review process, engineering review looks at the feasibility of the site for utilities, adjacent utilities, and really just all engineering aspects of the site design. And as mentioned before, we've gone over this site multiple times, and from an engineering standpoint, not much has changed. So I'll be relatively brief. This site on the corner of Ecorse and Haggerty actually has plentiful utilities along the adjacent roadways, both on Haggerty and Ecorse Road. And within my review letter here, I'll just touch on what we're looking at for each individual utility. So for water main service, there is water main service that runs north and south along Haggerty Road. This is the water main that has just recently been upgraded to a larger size. 16-inch along Haggerty, and there's also a 12-inch water main running along the north side of Ecorse Road as well. The applicant is proposing their water service to come off of the 12-inch water main that runs along Ecorse Road. So their water service will run north and south into the west side of the building, which we see no issues with. There's no water main concerns on the site at this point, other than the applicant needs to follow the engineering or township standards with any water main design of their service or on-site hydrants. For the sanitary sewer, there is a existing sanitary sewer that runs along Ecorse Road as well. The applicant is proposing running a service connection, again, along the western side of the building and tapping into the existing sanitary sewer along Ecorse Road. No major concerns with this connection other than following the engineering standards. And with all utility connections and any work within the right-of-way, obviously we recommend and require the applicant to go through the county to get the county permit for right-of-way work. One comment on the existing sanitary sewer. It appears that the existing sanitary sewer does run along the property line, so we will request a easement for that sanitary sewer on the property so that any future maintenance of the sanitary sewer can be done by the township in the property for future maintenance. One of the big items that we always look at this time is the basic idea of stormwater management on the site. Currently, applicant is proposing an underground enclosed storage collection system that conveys stormwater and detains stormwater and then pumps with a stormwater pump station into the Haggerty Road system. One of the things, we don't review the overall design criteria at this point, but we always do like to remind the applicant that they not only need to follow the Wayne County standards, but also need to follow the township standards and meet both of the criteria when moving forward with the underground detention. One of the comments, one of the concerns, one of the few concerns that we do have is the applicant is discharging their underground detention into the Haggerty Road system into an existing catch basin. We'd like the applicant to do a little bit of research. We'd like a little bit more information on that catch basin itself, the size of the catch basin. As we know, catch basins do get clogged a lot. They do, don't run as well. And the last thing we want to do is be discharging our detention pond into an existing catch basin on Haggerty Road that could potentially cause greater flooding. So this will be worked through with the county as well, but it is one of the concerns that we see with the system at this point. Moving on to paving and grading. We don't have any major issues other than making sure that the detailed grades and slopes in the parking lot are labeled on the plans. There are minimums and maximums in which this parking lot can have overall on the site. And the only other concern is on the west side of the property. We'd like to look at the grading and make sure that we're not negatively impacting the property to the west and that all water is flowing to and into the property and not off-site. We did also look at a traffic impact study that was provided, dated December 11th, 2023. I won't go into all the details of a couple of items that need to be looked at, but we would like that traffic study to be updated per the newest and latest layout of the site based on the size of the building, the use of the building, the amount of gas station pumps, and all of that. Because when we look at it and it differs from what we're reviewing, then it brings up some red flags. So if it gets updated, we can take a look at it. We didn't see any major red flags, but we would like to see it updated. And obviously the traffic impact study should be submitted to the county as part of the separate review and approval from Wayne County DPS. Lastly, I know there was some questions previously and even brought up tonight about wetland mitigation on the site. We didn't, there's in the plans as of now, there aren't any wetlands labeled on the site, and maybe the applicant can speak on it. We did do a due diligence review of just the Eagle Wetland Mapper, and there are some depicted soils that would be classified as wetland soils on the site, as well as some lowland areas that we would like to get some further information on, and whether or not the applicant has looked into that, we don't know, but that would be, require an Eagle review, and any impact to those would be required a permit from Eagle. So other than that, we don't see any major issues with the site as far as engineering feasibility is concerned, and we would recommend that the Planning Commission grant the Jarbo site plans dated September 18th, 2024, preliminary site plan approval based on engineering feasibility and subject to the comments in our letter dated October 1st, 2024. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kamer. Director Akers, do you have something from the Township Fire Department?
Yes, so our Township Fire Department did a preliminary site plan review for the construction of this project. The focus of the review is water supply, fire department access, and they used the adopted fire codes of the township in the review. In the comments, our fire marshal identified that the 2 hydrants that were shown off-site at the entrance off Haggerty Road and the second hydrant off the entrance Ecorse Road, those 2 hydrants meet the requirement of the IFC code that we adopted. The second item that the fire department looked at was emergency access. The applicant has provided an emergency access plan which shows vehicle movement around the entire development, and they have used the proper dimensions for the Van Buren Township ladder truck. According to the fire marshal's comments, this emergency vehicle access plan is compliant with our code. They have a few other general comments that they had listed. One of them is that a Knox box will be required for the building, and they specify how to obtain a Knox box. They had specified that no parking fire lane signage shall be provided as necessary and will be field verified during the project construction. They also indicated that the no parking fire lanes as described on sheet C2 are compliant with our code requirements. And they had also indicated that all fire department concerns at this time have been addressed in their latest submittal. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And do we have something from our applicant, Mr. Jarbo?
Jarbo again, just happy to answer any questions, any concerns. We're going to definitely comply with Vidia's letter and definitely with the engineer's letter. Anything we can do to help there, obviously.
Okay, planning commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about the curb cut and the road access.
Sure.
I see on the plan that's currently on the screen that there's a deceleration lane on, oh, yeah, it's on the screen, don't need to move it. Yeah, a deceleration lane coming in off of Ecorse Road, but there isn't a deceleration lane on the opposite corner on the northeast side. Why is that? Is that because they're 2 different classes of roads and the deceleration lane's required? Perhaps for engineering?
For engineering.
Yeah, typically it's based off of, and this is where the traffic study would come in, and ultimately it is the county's recommendation or call on that. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I don't like to speak too much because I'm not a traffic engineer. But as far as distance from other curb cuts or intersections, and the potential for not stacking, but queuing or turning backups along those lines. And so when you get into the proximity to the intersection, you don't want cars slowing down, or as we know with gas stations, they get bogged up quite a bit with people coming in and out. So the deceleration lane here would allow for a little bit more. And again, I don't want to speak on why there is one here or there, but I will take that back to our traffic engineers and bring it up as part of our review process.
Yeah, for final, that would just be very curious to know. The reason I'm asking is because I see that the curb cut in the northeast corner, which is currently not on the screen, yeah, that one is now looking like a right in, right out. And I understand that's to prevent people leaving the gas station from making a difficult left onto Haggerty. My concern with it is that it also prevents anyone from making a legal left into the gas station off of Haggerty. And I can think of one very common example, and that's the right-in, right-out that's by Leo's Coney Island on Belleville Road and the O'Reilly. What ends up happening is people go, oh, I've missed my turn, and they do that illegal left into the, around the curb island, and it's really dangerous. At least on Belleville Road, it's really dangerous. And that's a personal opinion. I don't have numbers to back it up, but I live here. So I'm wondering about that curb cut, and I understand why there needs to be a right hand only going out, but I'm concerned about there not being a left hand in. And if there's a traffic information study, I think we need to know where's the next turnaround for the guy who misses the entrance into the gas station, can't turn left. Is he going to be turning around in someone's house 3 lots up? I mean, it's a concern I have with the traffic.
Well, if I can too, is there, on Haggerty Road, is there a left or center turn lane?
Yes.
Because I think there will be a center turn lane?
All right, now it's under
Haggerty?
construction, it's closed.
No, for north,
In this area,
for
yeah.
northbound. Because northbound, I would agree with the no left into it, but if there's a left-hand turn lane, that could alleviate some of that.
It's also really close to the intersection, so I think
Let's call it a left turn lane because there's no establishment to turn left into for northbound traffic. It's just, there's no curb cuts. So it's, and with the increase of traffic that is likely coming from Ashley Capital, coming down Haggerty, that left turn queuing, southbound Haggerty to eastbound E-course, that left turn queuing is quite significant. So that would be the other, you'd have people trying to come into this center turn lane, turning left while trucks are trying to enter the left turn lane southbound. So you'd have.
And the reason why we recommended this right-in, right-out design is if you allow for left turn out of the site going, it's a good point whether left turn can come in, but the reason why we restricted left turn out of the site going north on Haggerty is if there is traffic, north or southbound truck traffic, there is going to be a stacking of vehicles waiting in order to make that turn, which means all access to the drive-through lane is cut off. Now you're having vehicles trying to enter the site, and their way to get into the drive-through is blocked by vehicles trying to exit the site. If it's right out, they can keep moving, because if they get stacked inside the site, they're going to cut off people being able to get into the drive-through lane from Haggerty. So that's why we did this. But yes, that is a good point that what about northbound Haggerty being able to turn? I wonder if that island can be designed. I think this is something a traffic engineer can do, which would keep it as right out only, but allowing for right into the site and being able to turn left into the site of Haggerty. There has to be an island design to accomplish that.
I would agree with that, because
Yeah.
not farther up is the light that's going to be going into Ashley Capital, and there are 3 lanes there.
Right.
And if someone is wanting to go north past Ashley Capital, they're traveling that way, they want to get in, they aren't going to be able to get in. They aren't going to want to have to sit at E-course and try to make a left-hand turn, because when they come out, when they come out, they're going to have to go left onto E-course Road, get to that light, and then try to make a light. You're making it very difficult for
Yes.
people that are going only north to get in and out of that place.
So right out only, right in, but also allowing for northbound Haggerty to be able to turn left into the site.
And I'd say if I could, I'd say if that's appropriate, we need the traffic study to look at the distance from the intersection and the distance from the BP. I did notice that on some of the later sheets that the adjacent curb cuts for the BP are shown, so I know that that does not line up exactly
No.
with the BP, right?
Right.
But I don't see on the plans, I couldn't see where the approved gas station to the south, I couldn't see where the sheets. It's not on there yet. So I think before we get to a final site plan, I'd like to, yeah, so there's the detail showing the BP entry. I'd like on the south side, I want to see on the plan where at least the proposed gas station is. Our consultant, Ms. Christman, spoke about moving the driveways around, but I couldn't see it on the
Yes.
plan.
The applicant had already done that drawing, because when we had recommended shifting it, they had actually shown how Sheets lines up with them. So they already have that drawing done, so they can show you how it works.
First final site plan review.
I have a question. How far is it from the traffic light to that cut into on Haggerty Road?
150 feet minimum. So on the site plan, the note should be there saying that is, it should be on the site plan. This is a circulation plan, Frank. You'll have to go other direction. Go back up to the site plan. Oh, the first, no, next sheet. Yes, stop right there. So there should be, it's 250 feet to the intersection.
Is that the center of intersection or to,
No, it is to the edge of the right-of-way. It has to go from the edge of the
Way.
right-of-way to the edge of the, that's how our ordinance defines it needs to be
okay.
measured.
Because I was just wondering, we're gonna have a lot of truck traffic eventually coming down Haggerty Road, and the average truck length of a semi is, what, 80 feet?
73 feet on the plans.
73 feet? Okay.
But it was, sorry, that's what it said.
Okay, that would be roughly 4 trucks lined up there to make a left turn. Is there room for somebody to make a left turn into that?
Are you talking about trucks making a left turn into the site? No.
Making a left turn onto Ecorse Road from Haggerty as they head south.
Okay.
And is that possible? We could see 4 trucks or 5 trucks backed up there that would block that lane anyways.
It's just gonna be a very difficult site for someone going north on Haggerty to get in and get out without having to go through a lot of hassle.
I know I would make a left on Ecorse and then a right into the facility.
If the property to the north was developed with cross-access and another curb cut, that eases it all. But
Yeah.
that's a future thing. That's not a
Right.
today thing, and we have to think about the today thing.
But they're gonna think maybe they can, because that will be 3 lanes, because there's 3 lanes till it gets to the light at Ashley Capital. So people are gonna want to turn in there if they wanna go north. And they'll figure out how to get out, but
We
gonna
don't
be a
want them to
difficult-
climb over that new paver island, so I think it's a good idea to explore right out only, right in, and also northbound Haggerty vehicles being able to turn. I'm sure that island that is in the middle, its design can be modified. There are engineering details for it, but that's something their traffic engineer should be able to advise them on better.
I'd like to pile on a little bit here too. I think to really consider a decel lane makes a lot of sense to me, considering that that area is going to be more heavily traveled, not just from Ashley Capital, but from residents who over the years have avoided going either north or south in that area because of the road. Believe me, I know. And so there's going to be an appreciable amount of traffic. So I think that a decel lane would, especially with trucks, if that right turn backs up, it's going to block those. I think it would be very beneficial to get that in.
and like you said, I think because the road's been so terrible, the minute it gets paved, people will use it. Yeah.
The paved parts are nice. Don't need an off-road vehicle anymore. It's pretty nice.
So the other,
With large ground clearance.
the other thing too is the trucks turning in, they're gonna be running over these curbs. They're gonna run over the inside curb and that island are gonna get destroyed. I don't know if it's, I looked at the turning radius, that line is right on the curb both ways. I don't know if there's any way to widen it, but definitely the trucks are gonna destroy it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think if I could summarize, the Planning Commission would like to see some more traffic information study around the 2 curb cuts, just to make sure that they are extra due diligence, given that the road has changed. If we could.
That goes back to our comment in our letter, where the site differs now than it did when the traffic impact study. And typically those impact studies will take into consideration stacking or queuing on Haggerty Road. We'll take into consideration the right turn decel lanes based on anticipated traffic movements and potentially impacts to the roadway. So that would be part of our look as well when that study comes back to us.
And for the planning commission's consideration, that I think the driveway separation as proposed looks good. It's
Yeah,
the
I would agree
little
with that.
functional left in, right out. But the separation itself, that's something that we would be responsible for approving. And I
Right.
think that this driveway separation as proposed in the preliminary site plan is
And-
acceptable.
And I think the island itself, as it's typically supposed to be landscaped in this case, I would think we'd accept that too, right? That's just hardscape, because like I said,
Yeah.
lots of flat plants.
I actually recommended that they not put landscape because just the snow moving and the salting of the road, nothing will survive in there. It's going to die and it's going to look like a bunch of weeds. So that's why we suggested landscaping in this sense does not, in this place would not make sense.
And while we're on it, the other thing that we'll have to accept is the reduction of the stacking, right, from 10 down to 7.
I did want to bring that up too as another discussion topic. Normally, when we are being asked to change the stacking requirements, we know like what the restaurant is. Like our restaurant has fancy kiosk ordering systems, and so we don't need as much stacking. Or I don't know, there have been a lot of explanations over the years for why the stacking isn't required, but they all involve knowing who the tenant is. And I'm a little uncomfortable with this, not knowing exactly who the tenant is. I wonder if our consultant could speak to that in more detail and maybe allay my fears a bit.
So we don't always know who the tenant is because tenants are subject to change. If you recollect the mobile gas station with drive-through at I-94 Service Drive and Haggerty that we approved, they did not have a tenant in mind when they approved that. So
We changed their stacking number too, right?
yes, we did change. In this case, the applicant, we have had other sites, if you even recollect Culver's, not the best site because it is so weirdly shaped. There's no site I've seen that is shaped. What was it? Octagon, pentagon, whatever it was.
He's helping, by the way.
Non-hexagonal.
It was some strange
Non-trapezoidal.
shape. So even in that, we invariably a drive-through lane, even if you look at the Tim Hortons on Belleville Road and all, to some degree, when the stacking wraps around, there is some parking spaces around it. So if the applicant wanted, they could always curve the 7, put 8, 9, 10. They could technically get that in. We just thought there was no need to show something that would block these, which happens in just about every drive-through restaurant that has got that. But yes, should they need stacking, they will be able. The reason why we require more stacking is to prevent nuisance on public streets. We don't want the vehicles to stack onto Haggerty or Acres. In this case, the site has enough room, should people want to get in, that they can stack on the site itself. There is room.
That's super. On the drive-through design, I notice it's got curbs on both sides. Have you considered providing an escape
Right.
route? That's 15 car lengths in which once you pull in, you can't really get out if you need to. Have we
once you're
considered
in,
that
you're
at all?
Told the applicant not to provide an escape route.
Why is,
People do this
it
all
might be the
time.
right thing to do.
So,
I'm
The
asking.
reason for that is, if somebody is, would you scroll it down? I'm not too tall. So if somebody is over here and suddenly they just get frustrated and they decide they don't want to be in the lane anymore, they immediately cut. This is oncoming traffic. So you end up trying to cut and go that side. That's a potential point of conflict. So yes, if you have gotten into a drive-through and you're frustrated, you'll just have to wait till you exit the drive-through. You don't need to order, but the concern is if you suddenly decide, I'm just going to get out of this, if a vehicle is coming from the other side, you have the likelihood of going head-on into them.
A safety thing.
Yes, it is definitely a safety thing. So that's why we were concerned. We went over this.
Taco Bell
lot.
has that too.
Through the chair. One question, kind of talking about the stacking. Honestly, I'm probably fine with the stacking, the variance, but, or not technical variance, but we were saying, so if we're having a write-in, if we want extra, overflow stacking in that strip, would you have to come in and then loop all the way back around? Is that
You would,
possible?
there are sites that have that. Should you need additional, yes, you would loop around the whole thing. Tim Hortons on Belleville Road. You enter and you go around the whole building and you come back right back to the drive-through. You will have to. That's,
And that, can I, Could I interject?
Yeah, that's
And
all.
that, and that's why you specifically don't want to put that extra stacking signage on the, or,
Exactly.
lines on the parking lot, because then people think they would actually have to do a loop past the truck fill, and I understand. That makes sense.
That was
The
Vidia's
applicant-
idea, not my idea.
I think it's a good idea.
I cannot help every time I go to a drive-through lane or something, seeing how people try to cut. And I've seen so many near misses when people just decide, I'm not going to wait over here, I'm just going to go. And they don't pay attention to who's coming from behind or who's coming from the front. And it's like by a hair's breadth. We don't want to design a site that we know right off the bat is going to have that point of conflict. So hopefully with that island having decorative grasses, and hopefully you'll have a good restaurant tenant in there, that somebody who gets into the drive-through won't get frustrated waiting there for their food.
I think that the stacking requirement shown on this plan and recommended by McKenna is acceptable.
Yes.
in my opinion.
Okay, anybody else? Questions, comments?
I have a question for Commissioner Grant.
Yes.
Can you see the materials sample?
I was gonna ask if I could see that. And actually, I would encourage when we get through the next round too, if there's any type of perspective, so everyone can see how the building looks in its volume rather than flat elevation.
Yeah,
Right.
3D rendering.
Okay, so I'm gonna be the Vanna here. Can you go to an elevation?
Would you like me to hold it?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay.
So it shows a little darker on the.
That's the base? Yes. Okay, which you're right, it shows really dark on here. Yeah, when you do the perspective, if you lighten it up, it probably would help.
Yeah.
So that's the field. What's the,
The brown is that longboard, yeah.
okay, so it has a wood look to it.
So it's what it's called longboard, and it looks, we've used it in a lot of our developments. It looks like wood,
Yeah.
but it's a steel panel, metal panel.
This. And then that's the coping, basically. Okay. And then this is just showing the
Trim.
The
Yep.
trim or the windows, right? The window.
I can't see.
It's like a dark bronze.
Storefront framing.
Yeah, it is the framing. Yeah, it's the framing. Okay. Yeah.
Pass it on.
I'm good.
You don't need to see more, Peter?
I don't need a touch. I can see.
I'm not a
We're good. I like I like it lightness
Yeah.
through the chair, sorry.
Definitely, it's.
I think,
that's better.
yeah, I think the bottom, I was a little concerned that it's too dark. But I like the lightness of the actual
Well,
material, so.
I think you can just barely see the light, where the
Yeah.
light, and then there's a stripe halfway.
Yeah. It just got
Yes.
lighter, whatever you did.
These
it
are
just got lighter.
these are windows too as well. I mean, we want it to be bright in there.
So on your drawings, do you call out those materials? I mean, the specific brick type, so that's,
Yeah,
you're
specific
not
brick
gonna
type
pull a
and yeah,
substitute
it's-
on these, right?
No substitute.
So Frank, that's what I wanted to emphasize
Make sure,
on.
right?
Once the planning commission approves the material board with the specific color and the specific manufacturer, you cannot change it without planning commission approval.
Absolutely,
Because
yes. Yep.
that is why we ask you to bring the material board.
Absolutely.
So should you not be able to get the brick for some reason or something, do not swap it out without checking with planning commission first.
Absolutely. You have that, yep.
Thank you.
Situation
We're like that.
somewhere along the way.
Anything else with regard to planning, with regard to the preliminary? I think that it's a very nice site design. I think it'll fit on the corner very well.
I think it'd be useful. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Okay, do we have anything from the public? Anybody in the public wishing to speak?
Mr. Chairman, there is nobody on Zoom wishing to speak.
No one in the public? Okay, then I will entertain a motion if someone so desires.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion. I'll make a motion to grant preliminary site plan approval to Frank Jarbo of Symmetry Management to construct a gasoline filling station, convenience store and drive-through restaurant on 2.25 acres of property at the northwest corner of Haggard and Ecorse Roads, subject to the letters from McKenna dated October 1st, 2024, Fishback dated October 1st, 2024, Van Buren Township Fire Department dated September 25th, 2024, and I'd like to note that the Planning Commission, we are in agreement that the access drive off of Haggerty Road, the offset is acceptable, the modification from the township standards. Also that we've accepted the modification to the island that's part of that drive, not being landscape but going to a hardscape. We've also accepted the reduction of the 10 required stacking spaces for the restaurant down to 7.
Support?
Would you like to add the two conditions you discussed? You wanted a 3D rendering
Oh, yeah.
of the proposal, and you also said you wanted an update traffic study to show the access drives with an explanation for how left turn movements northbound on Haggerty into the site would work.
I would like to amend that to add a traffic study in detail regarding the drives into the property, as well as providing a 3D rendering for the project.
No worry, absolutely.
Discussion of the motion.
Support.
I'd like to discuss the motion. I'd also like to ask the applicant, you saw us up here tonight with big paper folders, flipping through them, trying to get a view. That's because the paper plans were, for whatever reason, we didn't get them until the day of the meeting. We had partial electronics, but not the full plans. For the full final site plan review, I'd ask you could please make sure we have those paper plans a week before the meeting so that we can, on preliminary, we can do it electronically, but for final, some of us like to get out our pencils. Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have
We're today.
we have a motion by Commissioner Grant, support by Commissioner Creel. Do we have any discussion on the motion besides Commissioner Jar?
Still in support of the motion, as stated.
Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Creel?
Yes.
Bernie Grant? Sherry Budd?
Yes.
Jackson Paul? Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Cullen?
Yes. Motion carries. You have your preliminary site plan, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate everything.
Yes. Okay, next up, new business. Item number 1, Wildbrook Condominium Site Plan Amendment. The applicant, Gilbert Holmes, is requesting an amendment to the approved Wildbrook Site Condominium Plan for a proposed single-family architectural elevation to be constructed on up to 3 lots. The unfinished Wildbrook condominiums is subject of the request. The development is located between Martinsville and Haggerty Road on the south side of Savage Road. Do we have a presentation by the township staff?
Yes,
Director Akers?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Gilbert Holmes, on behalf of the landowner, C.A. Kime, is requesting an amendment to the approved Wildbrook condominium, which is a detached single-family site condo, to allow one new model architectural elevation to be built on the subdivision in 3 different lots. Condominiums includes detached single-family residential home sites and a site condominium. The developed is subject to the approved site plan and private restrictions on their master deed and bylaws. The development was constructed prior to the passage of the current ordinance regulating single-family residential dwellings and all site condominiums and subdivisions, which regulate required minimum facade material percentage, garage door orientation, and other features. From a search of our records, the project appears to have been initially approved in construction between 1997 and 1999. The original development included approved architectural design by the original builder and developer, who is no longer involved with the project. The Planning Commission customarily reviews proposed changes to architectural design in existing subdivisions on site condo projects. The proposed plans will be reviewed under the applicable sections of the zoning code, which address architectural details in subdivisions and site condos, except where certain requirements are more stringent than the terms of the original site plan approval. Plans are also governed by the master deed and the bylaws, which are administered by the Wildbrook Condominium Homeowners Association. The following staff review of the architectural plan was based on the conditions of the zoning code. This review was prepared originally by Director Power, so I will go through it very briefly. Looking at the site plan, the review specifies what the setbacks are as far as front, side, and rear yards. The unit has a width of at least 80 feet. Each lot has a width of at least 80 feet and a depth of 125 feet within Wildbrook subdivision. This proposed model has a dimensions of 41 feet and 46 feet, 4 inches, which will fit within the required setbacks. The R1B zoning district requires a minimum floor area of 1,500 square feet, exclusive of decks, patios, porches, and breezeways. The proposed model floor will be over 2,000 square feet, which meets that requirement. The other requirement that we look at are the facade elevations. We have a requirement, as the Planning Commission may know, to ensure these elevations are substantially different. Substantial difference in style between units must be maintained from neighboring lots within 3 lots of the proposed parcel and within 3 lots of the parcel across the street. The 3 individual building sites that are being proposed by the applicant are sufficiently separated so as not to cause concern that the construction of the same model at each site will violate the requirement. Units will otherwise be evaluated for substantial architectural difference in comparison with nearby units during building plan review, which is something that usually is handled by the planning director. So under the township zoning code, at least 50% of the total wall area of residential structures are required to be finished with brick or stone. However, as we previously mentioned in our review, the Wildbrook condominium development was approved prior to the passage of this ordinance. Based on analysis of the submitted architectural elevations, the front facade elevation will have a minimum of 50% brick, which is consistent with the aesthetic of other homes which are within the Wildbrook subdivision. The last item we look at are side entry garages. At least, our current requirement is at least 30% of the single-family detached units in new subdivision or site condo must have side entry-oriented garages. However, as previously mentioned, the Wildbrook condominium development was approved prior to the passage of this code, and so the proposed units are not designed, the proposed lots, are not designed as side entry units in the Wildbrook condominium. Based on the analysis, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the site plan amendment to the Wildbrook condominium for the elevation to be built by Gilbert Homes, subject to the following condition. The request was that the proposed model is subject to approval by the Wildbrook Condominium Association or their designee for architectural approvals. At this time, the applicant has not submitted their homeowners association letter to the township yet. However, after verbally speaking with the applicant, it is understood that they have received it. And we will not be granting, if approved, we will not be granting any building permits approvals until that letter is received by the township. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have the applicant here today. Okay. Commission, discussion, questions?
I toured it today. I took a
Did you?
drive through the community today. It's very pretty. I saw the empty lots. I think the houses will fit nicely on them. They look good. I also saw a lot of side entry garages, so I don't know if that development predates the condominium agreement, or side entry garages were just very popular during the time that subdivision was put in, or condominium was put in. But I also believe there are a lot of side entry garages in there, and these 3 lots, there are side entry garages on either side of them. I don't think doesn't look like it's gonna skew the ratio very much. So I believe the director's analysis that if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. I'm just telling you what I saw today. They look nice.
They actually built side entry garages when they were not required to. That's even more impressive.
And I'll be honest, they look nice. A very nice subdivision, very nice
Yes.
condominium.
Through the chair, I was going to say the same thing. I was through there a couple weeks ago, and there's even 3-car garages. I mean, some of them homes are huge, but I didn't see any that were single-story. Most of them all are two-story.
Yeah.
So when I read that all units have to have 1,500 square feet, I don't know how they're gonna do that. How are they gonna put a 1,500 square foot, on those lots, but then the garage has to be attached, and by not making another story, they're gonna be snug right in there. But I've not seen any
These are
single
two-story.
story. Huh?
These are two-story.
There are two-story, but it said all units have to be 1,500 square feet. So a single floor unit with only one floor in the basement, which you
Yeah, they
don't
probably
count,
can't.
would be
Yeah.
pretty tight in there. Because, and I've not seen any single stories, and, the homes are huge. They're a lot more than 1,500 square feet. It's a pretty subdivision. So I don't want to be the poor guy trying to put a 1,500 square lot in there. Just a comment.
I believe when the subdivision was originally proposed, there were any ranches that were tied into it. I know we had looked at the previous package of what was approved, and I don't recall any ranches, and I don't recall seeing any in the sub, but it would be tight for sure.
Anybody else? Questions? Comments? My question is that from what I see in the elevations that were presented, is the amount of brick that's being applied less than 50%?
Yes, yes.
Less. It's got, our ordinance requires 50% brick on each facade. So you have to at least go up to the first level brick on the sides also. This one has just 50% brick on the front facade. The sides are all siding.
What is the rest of the site? Is the rest of the site 50% brick on all sides?
According to the review letter, it was prepared by Director Power. When they looked at the aesthetic of other homes in the development, he had made the reference that this was consistent. So according to this, it would be consistent with the other homes that are in there.
Mr. Chair, there's
Yes.
a lot of brick in that
A lot of
subdivision.
brick on
A
them
lot of
houses.
brick in that
Yeah,
subdivision.
there are.
But I'd add that even if we grant this amendment to the site plan, it's still subject to their HOA approval.
Yes.
And if the HOA feels that the amount of brick is appropriate, then I feel like I'm okay with it as well. Just with the understanding that the HOA, if the HOA says no, yeah. But yes, to answer your point, yeah, there's a lot of brick in there. Brick and side
Okay.
entry garages in there.
I like brick and side entry garages.
Would you like to see
Okay.
material sample?
No, I'll leave that for Commissioner Grant.
Good man.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Questions? Seeing none, do we have a move on this item?
You want to go for three? Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jar?
I move to grant the applicant Gilbert Holmes an amendment to the approved Wildbrook condominium site plan for a proposed single-family architectural elevation to be constructed on up to 3 lots based on the analysis and subject to the conditions in the letter of staff from 6 September 2024.
I'll support that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Grant, supported by Treasurer Bud. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Commissioner Jar.
Commissioner Jar, excuse me. I'm doing two things. and
He thought he
it's-
was going to go for 3. We all thought you were.
With that, do we have any discussion on the motion? With that, roll call vote, please.
Bud? Bernie Grant?
Yes?
Peter Creel?
Yes.
Jackson Paul? Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Cullen?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. With that in mind, that brings us down to general discussion and updates. Director Powers, do you have anything new for us?
No, that's.
I'm
Director
doing
Grant.
well tonight. Director Akers, I apologize.
No problem. So just a few updates. At the next planning commission meeting, we don't have any development applications before us. However, we will have a draft of a proposed non-residential mixed-use PUD ordinance. The other item that that had been discussed about potentially having at the next meeting was there have been a number of smaller provisions in our zoning code, which I know we've identified as being challenging or we've granted repeated deviations from, which we've been allowed to in our code, or we've had issues with. I wanted to add a discussion item at the next meeting to kind of bring those up and itemize them and prioritize them so we can begin to address them and update our zoning code. So please, if you can think of any sections specifically in the zoning code you want to bring up at that meeting, please bring it up so we can make sure that they get addressed. The last item I wanted to bring up is at the Board of Trustees meeting at the last week. The Sheets received their special land use approval, so they'll be moving forward doing civil engineering drawings. And then the development agreement amendment for the Walden Woods development was approved at the Board of Trustees meeting last week as well. So Pulte Homes will be resubmitting. We had met with them. The current plan is the Planning Commission will see that development at their first meeting in November. So we will see that for preliminary site plan approval.
Gotta talk about, let them know about the bridge.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Wait, I saw trucks. I saw people working. I saw drilling going on, dude. It was kind of nice.
On October 7th, DTE mobilized on the Denton Road Bridge. They're going to be doing directional boring. They're going to be boring their 3-inch high-pressure gas main underneath Belleville Lake, which is the first step in getting the bridge project started. So their current schedule, they started October 7th. They're going to be working, should be completed by the end of the year. Wayne County already has a contractor to demolish and replace the bridge. So they are working with them. And hopefully we'll have contracts in place and they'll be able to start doing bridge demolition sometime in January.
Camping World.
And Camping World also started construction back up. They had workers on site today, so.
Ron, Belleville Retail is going to come back at the next meeting?
Yes, so Belleville Retail, thank you for clarification.
plan.
Belleville Retail will be coming for final site plan on October 23rd.
Okay, that's the Sherman-Williams.
Yes,
Sherwin
that will be
Williams.
coming, and I apologize, they originally were slated for this evening, but they postponed, so they will be coming back on the 23rd. Thank you for clarification.
That's the one that came in today and paid for their engineering water fees and stuff. Which one came in today? It was on Belleville Road this afternoon. Was that them?
I'm not certain. I'd have to go back and
Okay.
take a look.
Was it the car wash? It could have been.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see the address, but I know they brought money in, so that's good.
Our treasurer, that's why you're such a great treasurer, Cherry. You keep track of that money.
I watched the money.
One of the items that we can review when we do the ordinance thing, can we look at stacking for drive-throughs? I know I haven't been on the commission long, but I think every drive-through that we've approved, we amend that. And I don't know, I would like the
not
other
have to do
commissioners.
that.
Well, I would like the other commissioner, to justify the 10, because if we can, according to staff,
Yeah.
it seems like it's more restrictive or more excessive than other municipalities around here, and if we could look at that and not have to approve it every time.
Commissioner, the chairman and I were discussing it, and because we're on the BZA, and we
So
said,
was the treasurer.
if these things were going to BZA and we're a variance every time, the BZA chair would have already kicked it back to us and said, we're not doing any more of these. You gotta adjust the rule.
Yeah.
So I think it's time.
We can add that to that list for next time.
Absolutely.
Our master plan had some recommendations for ordinance changes that we might want to go through and just consider, those were recommendations, but we might want to talk about them and prioritize them too as a potential source of things to discuss.
And then another comment about stacking. I did go through Culvers the other day when there was a lot of traffic there, and I thought, oh, do I really want to do this? Well, I continued just to see, and I think it made a difference.
It did.
Double.
I
Okay,
think it
excellent.
made a difference that we weren't stacked.
Having the ti-
Once
okay.
we made the order, we weren't stacked, and the kids were continually running up, so cars didn't have to find some place to park to stack.
That's a very challenging site.
Yeah,
The fact that
so
they make it work is amazing. It's just so odd.
Yeah, so I think it helped.
Good, good. It's nice to hear that we did something right.
I I think that worked out good.
Anybody else? Comments, questions? I know Commissioner Jar and I were at the
Oh, yeah. Michigan Association
Michigan
of
Planners, and some good information was passed along, and it was nice to see that we do some things right here in the township, and
It's,
as far as the legality, we sat through one on legal, and thank God for Tina.
And-
Keeping the records the way she does and how precise things are, we appreciate that.
after seeing we were in the same presentation on the absolute importance of making sure that your minutes are accurate and filed on time and are correct, and that when you approve them, you don't just go, approve. You really have to read them, and it really drove home what an excellent recording secretary we have. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes seeing how the other folks run into problems to really appreciate how good you've got it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we picked up some good information at the planning conference. Well worth our time of being there.
Yeah.
And thank you. Anybody, anything else? Then go Tigers. How'd they do today, Eddie?
They won.
Did they win? All right.
Yeah,
Tigers-
they were 3-0 when I came down here. so-
Okay. Great. Anyways, going ahead, I then would entertain that last elusive motion for,
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
we have a motion to adjourn and support. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
Excellent.